them. They're on their path ahead off of the loser's bracket and now have a chance to potentially work their way back in it, get into those lower bracket quarters. But all it needs to do is encompass one game against each other. Mydong immediately, right off the bat, straight against the Wraith.
Yeah, going Wraith no more. Viscous also banned away. So that's an interesting ban. I don't think we've seen Viscous. We saw one Viscous in the first game. I think we saw Deadlock Demons play Viscous. But outside of that, it doesn't feel like a huge priority as a pickup, especially in Europe. I feel like it's almost a mainstay. Something that you're teeter-tottering. Okay, you took the Kelvin, we're taking the Viscous, or something. So you took the McGinnis, we're taking the Viscous in North America. It hasn't been that in EU.
I mean, it could potentially just be something they don't want to be pressured by. I don't personally find it to be something that is, like you said, meta, but if we go back to earlier today, they do lose against Deadlock dudes who were running that Viscous, and now it could just be something that they look towards, not only what might be represented from what they know about Mydong, who technically haven't played the Viscous today, but optimally could just be the fact that they had a rough time against it, and now in a position where they don't want to lose, it's the primary suspect.
It also maybe just throws a wrench into the draft. Hey, we're going to ban the Viscous. What do you pick, right? If we didn't ban necessarily a priority to then give you a priority, which could have very well been an Infernus ban or a Lash ban, something of the sort. They ban away the Viscous. It's an early pocket pickup, and that's going to allow, not that pocket isn't a power pick, but it's going to allow two pretty priority picks to go over to edge after banning away that Viscous. So we'll see what is picked up alongside the Infernus. Again, Kelvin has been contention on the day. The Edge have brought Ivy through both of the games that they have had to play. So maybe an Ivy pickup later in this draft. And Mirage is another one that this Edge team has played both games on the day. So maybe we see a Mirage early in this draft.
Shout out to the Mirage, by the way. Especially after the Buff Enjoyers game. I felt very good about it, seeing it in our earlier bracket before we even got there. But after now being absolutely proven here back in what was the play from Sherrick, I mean, it looks like a very strong pickup to have. And even if you're on the defensive end and you're not playing a super aggressive Mirage, he offers so much utility on cross-map control compared to any other major Mystic in the game, and offers probably some actual really, really nice kill potential if you can get him online.
Yeah, he's a tricky one to kill with those Scarabs, also elusive with his Tornadoes, and then obviously we talk about his cross-map pressure. He is absolutely got it. So that Mirage does eventually get picked up by Edge, and the response is Lady Geist followed by X. I don't know if X has already happened or if we're still waiting for that third pick to come on through, but Lady Geist has really made an appearance since some of the changes, and the changes were really cooldown things where it feels like, okay, she can, soul exchange you more often, and because of that, the rest of the kit, it's been enough to say, okay, sure, we'll take this. Yes, the Essence Bomb has always been a nuke, but now that I can ult a couple more times, which means I can be aggressive and be safe a couple more times, the Lady Geist has really jumped up to a priority for a lot of these teams. And alongside being unkillable, you slap the Shiv on top of it, and this is looking like I mean, who do you target? You can't target the Lady Geist because you get swapped.
Nope.
You can't target the Shiv because he'll take way too long to kill.
Yeah, I was about to say the Shiv is a great pickup and one that we haven't gotten to see a lot of today, especially due to that regional difference that we've discussed plenty of times over. If you want to hear it, go rewind the stream. But ultimately, it's going to put potentially Mydong in the driver's seat. Oh, so close. In the driver's seat today to get a little bit more aggressive when it comes to the Edge.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Professionals. The response now as we jump into our 1-for-1s, Lash picked up. Lash has not been a priority for the games that we have seen, and it's so surprising to me because of how strong Lash is. What I would love to see out of the Lash players is, although the Lash can solo lane, you can put him over there. It's super sustainable with his flog, does a lot of damage, can fight, all that good stuff. Love it. I enjoy the Lash in the duo lane. Obviously, you bring a lot to the duo lane, but playing on the middle of the map gives you more options to, well, play around the map, right? If you're playing Broadway, you can jump on out to Park, you can jump on over to Greenwich, versus playing so far away and only being able to help the lane right next to you. And because there's so much height in this game between the lanes, right, you have your Lash sitting on top of that museum, waiting for somebody to overextend, and then you're really getting the value from the Lash damage. You build a couple of spirit items, and somebody's getting blown up.
Still, though, when we talk about blowing things up, I haven't found a target that my eyes are set upon when it comes to really take advantage of it. Granted, in a team fight, the Lash will come through nonetheless. It will be an issue, and you'll get into a situation where, I mean, you end up against things like that Death Slam, and you're just, I mean, your team is gutted, and the fight has begun. But it's who you grab, and optimally, when we look at things now like that Warden online, this is another target that is very scary to play into, has continued to accelerate what looks to be Mydong's aggression when it comes down to how they're going to play out a lot of these team fights, and can be matched with more targets and more pickups, like our krills, like our other major DPSs that will continue that profile.
I will say that although not incredible target acquisition for the Lash and for Edge just in general, you do have a relatively close range comp. Now, the Kelvin kind of throws a wrench into things because of the frozen shelter. It's either, you know, the Lash is dropping down on you and then getting locked in, or you can maybe look to deny that Death Slam in total. But between Geist, between Shiv, between Warden, you're expecting those three to be in pretty close proximity to one another if you're team fighting. And so you're almost guaranteed 3 people in your ult if you're Lash. Obviously, that's a perfect world, but just looking at it, although they don't feel great to ult, they will be incredibly ultable. And we get Kelvin in support picked up for Mydong, and Ivy on the opposite side. The Ivy and the Mirage, those have been the 2 picks that Edge have really been leaning towards as far as mainstays for this team. And if you have cross-map pressure in the Mirage, well, you've just added to it with that Ivy.
And I like the fact that they follow up with the 7, because where we're hurting is a lot of that sustained damage that they can just rip off. They have a lot of poke pressure regarding the spirit damage now off of the Ivy and, of course, the Mirage from earlier, but getting that 7 on board to scale up alongside the Infernus is really cementing the profile that we'll see regarding what is usually going to be the damage that is pumped through the entirety of the fight for the Edge here. The Paradox in the end, that is another great engage tool so that we're not just relying on the Lash. I do worry, given the fact that you will likely find Mydong probably in the midst of the action, especially that Mo and Krill secured, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, they are looking to be on top of you, and to be honest, in most situations, that paradoxical swap could potentially be putting them in a rough spot, if not used for a catch potential on an escape. Be on their own, which is a really, really nice setup. And Lash and Shiv, we've seen them side potential all the time. This time around, instead of being on the same team, like we've seen in North America, time and time over, this time around, they're going to be toe-to-toe.
It does hurt a little bit because, again, that Lash isn't getting the most out of the mobility, isn't getting the most out of being able to play in the early lane and help out your side lane. So having a Mirage in a dual lane with the Ivy is, I think, takes away from some of the early game pressure that we could have seen from Edge. But we'll see how it pans out in the long run. More souls on your Lash is always a good thing.
Well, most of these teams particularly respectful. That Warden and Kelvin combo looking just as aggressive as I expected here for the likes of Mydong. Notably, having the early advantage regarding the grenade is something that every team has been so good at playing around.
Just a bit of poke damage, all erased as Captain hits that scorn on a couple of minions. And the survivability of the Mo and Krill really coming through. Power Surge to get us started, though, means Lolly doesn't have to hit the target as far as heroes goes. You can just go ahead and hit those minions, chain that damage, and get some extra poke into that backline like we're seeing there onto Captain.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say balance for solo lanes. Great pressure there. Meanwhile, looking for the box rotates, especially now that we're hitting that 2 to 3 minute mark. It's great pressure in response to make sure that you're just not allowed to move free willy there. Something that I do want to point out that is just a nice sign is that from Mitch, with the minute we saw that separation for Obscure kind of covering from the edge, Mitch is very quickly, or Max 6, is very quickly able to rotate over towards the other side, looking on that Broadway and seeing maybe if there's a potential entrance here to play on alongside his partners. And while there isn't, I like the fact that we're starting to see some of that flexibility in the lanes off of these split-second plays.
I just heard something incredibly alarming, but it happened to me in one of my games yesterday where the announcer just says, I think purple Walker is under attack. Nobody's Walker's under attack. So if you were looking away from your screen and you thought, we are a couple minutes into this game and Walkers are under attack, that is absolutely not happening. We are in a nice little stalemate in our laning phase. A burrow forced out here for Captain. Static Charge going to find the stun, but it's around the corner. Crew not in a great spot to be able to help out here. Forced to play back closer to that Walker just because of the damage output coming from this squad. So the pocket, not the healthiest man. Captain, however, is quite healthy, so he jumps his way right back into the fray.
He might be right into the fray, but he's right into that headshot range there. Taken low, almost losing a third of their health, and especially alongside the fact that it doesn't look much healthy here on the other side when we talk about Crew on this pocket. And I mean, you have to be respectful. Plays for the suitcase, and if Edge gets out of this one, that's absurd.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. Oh, good stun timing. Not enough, though.
There's combo.
To keep Edge safe. And yeah, the combo online here. 3,100 souls means he just got it, and Captain is looking to make this one work. Steps on in, parries the Guardian there to stop some of that damage, and eventually collects the kill. So a combo good for 1, 2 on the lane as Captain picks up the pieces.
And now, especially with the response from Crew on this pocket back into it, they might see potentially half damage dealt to that Guardian before we see the full response from Edge here. Looking at it now, Ani and Crew, we saw them with early pressure. Now looking for side splits here, dictating Kelvin potentially to the middle. Going to pick up some of that early solis and maybe push out Broadway as a whole. And more importantly, it's now a 2-for-1, right? With Tib on that other side, pressuring out the entirety here. And, well, hey, Mirage is quick TP away.
Yeah, that TP is available, so we'll see if we can pay attention to any cross-map plays. Speaking of Mirage, Obscure able to get his in the 2v2. Only be trying to get something back. Unfortunately, it's just a few pop shots. We'll be forced to back away and head back to lane. Is going to be meeting up with Tvik. Tvik.
Sure.
On that Warden.
Well, notably, it is once again another investment here, especially with the return from Waldo. You asked where, we found him. Straight back to York after what was early limited leads. I'm kind of seeing some wishy-washy play here on the other side of things from Mydong. It's not quite as secure when we talk about these rotations. Once again, another highlight, Obscure. It comes off of that lane there and is so quickly playing over the side, taking advantage off of Greenwich into the action. Side lane available, picks up the KP, walks away. I mean, it seems like Edge is so much more attentive in the early game here right now for picking up where they need to when it comes to the slack of defending these lanes.
Mirage players, man. This guy's so beefy. He's just standing up top. He's standing in the face of a Warden and a Kelvin that are they've just got strong guns, man. And he's just full health doing it. Finally going to eat some Arctic Beam pressure, but just standing and fighting. A couple stacks of the Jin's mark there. Is that 4, I think, topped off there at the end of it all.
Hello.
So Oni in a tough spot, but now our Jin has to sneak on out of this one. Obscure outside the frozen shelter. Might just have to watch this take place, and that he does. Maxich and eventually go down. Swapped up, though, as the Paradox makes her way into the lane. It's T-Vic. Beautiful parry there. The stuns are down, and Obscure just has to walk away from this one, but he can't do it. He struts his stuff backwards. Half HP is where he falls as he watches two of his teammates die in front of him, and he wants to try and get some more. The backups here as Ivy is returned to the lane, but it's Obscure who goes down. Nobody has fallen on the side of Mydong as they pick up 3 in that extended fight on Greenwich.
And for T-Vic and Ombi, they are out. Safe once again, straight to the Denizens with a wealth of souls. Even after all that sustained pressure from Edge on each of these lanes, it's getting into the fight that they struggle with. We talked about that getting in close potential, that absolute aggression that we expected from this roster, and they do just that. Given the opportunity to lock things in, to set it up with the frozen shelter, to be guaranteed a nice rotation with a swap basically presenting you the enemy right in front of you, they take full advantage, right? They pick up a wealth of kills and now continue to pressure out these lanes appropriately. Obscure on this side wave has to be so careful here. This time around, not going to be as conscious of the pressure, and as a result, it's another early wipe. The Edge has bled 6 kills here in the last 2 minutes.
That's a little heartbreaking. You know, they didn't even try to band-aid the wound. They just immediately go back to laning, being aggressive and getting punished for it. And the 3 players that were here, Uptown York, are still here, and they're secure themselves yet another Guardian as they continue to open up this map. It's flex slots available as well as Waldo falls on the opposite side. Really no harm, no foul. We'll see if maybe anything else can be done here by Edges. Aura sends a few shots into the back of Captain, but that's all it'll be. A little bit of icy hot on the back there of the Mo and Krill.
They need to take their time, now reset. I'll point it out, 9 minutes in, we're 2 minutes from the spawn of our Denizens, and the farm is ripe for the picking here for the likes of Mydong. And, they've done a great job. They've gotten aggressive. They've picked up an insane amount of KP here, but now we need to see them continue to extend that lead. They have an outstanding, absurd amount of souls that they're not taking advantage of. And the reminder is, especially with those cooldowns sitting around that, 4 to 7 minute mark, you're wasting potential respawns that could have already potentially been roughly 3/4 of the way through here.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, life lessons. Don't do drugs and farm your camps. And that's what Zephyr's talking about, those souls that are available around the map. Do your camps, but don't sacrifice your lanes to do your camps. That's important. But we saw that earlier in the day where I think it was Killing Spree who was down in the game, and they went to the alleyways. They went to the quote-unquote jungle to farm those Denizens, and it helped them march their way back into the game. Yeah, it was a big pickup to get them back into what was seeming like a losing game for that first half of it. So we'll see how, or if, no, as we're done talking about it, look at Edge. They've already cleared it all the way out, even taking the tier 3 camp.
Especially for what results in, great early fights, needs to be cemented by additionally every little detail that goes alongside it. Because when we talk about the core tournament as a whole here, when your competition probably at the end of it all is buff enjoyers, it's those little details that lead to the explosive leads that we see from rosters like buff outside of their individual skill prowess. Either way, that's more overall picture than we need to right now. It's currently the Urn. Mydong looking to cement themselves deep within the pack here of the Edge.
They're not happy with the 2K soul lead, so they'll look to take something extra. They set the Urn down for a moment. No, it's actually Kelvin still hanging on to that one after that frozen shelter scoops that back up. Mydong gonna lose their first and Captain to fall. It's Mo and Krill going down, but the combo was used, unfortunately. Nothing on the backside, and Edge were bleeding in these fights, but they've got themselves a slight lead for now. Urn still not secure. Now the bodies are starting to drop, but again, it's Maffin dying on the side of Mydong here. 2 players to fall in this team fight as they continue to set down and pick up the Urn. They haven't won the fight just yet. Oni next to go, and Edge just have clawed their way back into it.
Over on the side, missing out of what could have been a potential knock there from Lolly. They will chase this one out, but I mean, have to be so careful. Finally, it is going to be picked up by the edge of all squads here. Obscure, unlikely to get out, especially with, you can see that pulse coming through from behind there. And Captain is more than happy to cement. And while it does end up in the separation regarding the souls and the AP, and you wish it could have been a safe, secure for the likes of Mydong, I mean, they still walk away with some KP themselves, and maybe potentially some control here. Guardians cracked open wide, and still some pushing over to the other end. Tivik, meanwhile, is almost potentially 1v3ing there. Manages to get one out on the road. That fight was sustained for way too long on the minimap there. We missed it the early start, but that man was absolutely within the thick of it for what felt like roughly 10, 15, and still walked away with some KP.
Yeah, it goes 1 for 1. It still doesn't feel great to be that overextended and to die at the end of the day. And what was a 2K soul lead or a very small soul lead for Amber Hand, in all of that extended urn fight becomes a 6K soul lead over for Edge, and then we're now starting to even out. But it looked like the Amber Hand were starting to hit that moment where they're slowly pulling away. They're working those objectives, about to secure that urn. And then the fight just gets so incredibly weird. And 2 times they go to pick up that urn, but then realize that they're still in the fight. And Edge were able to walk away with so much, not only in way of kills, but also scooping up that urn for themselves. So in finding a 6K lead, it has now shrunk down to a 3K soul lead. It's not much to talk about in terms of the state of the game and who is ahead, but more so Edge have bought themselves some time, and they are no longer, they've stopped the snowball, essentially, is what I'm getting at, for lack of a better term.
And it's good. I mean, it's still within the close realm either way from Mydong, but I do want to highlight the fact that between Aura and the player Edge on the Paradox, they are starting to highlight the strengths of their damage, right? I mean, that Infernus becoming an issue, and now Max, once again, this is another solo pickup on Tivik, and a situation where you have overextended now over towards Park. Now, this could potentially be a follow-through on the chase. You've got 4 members of Mydong all set upon Greenwich. I mean, now you got to do something, right? Because the reality is, the more time you sustain in the same lane, the more you're allowing Edge to pick up 3 lanes worth of souls to keep pushing them forward on that lead. I mean, they can freeze that one out, let them die, and you are just missing money on the board.
Yeah, 3 Guardians still standing for Amber Hand. It just puts them in such a great spot in way of map control. And we saw Edge fight well for the urn, but, you know, if somebody's carrying the urn, that's Mydong being a player down. So now what does the fight look like for these objectives, right? For these Guardians, how do they start to pressure this? It looks like they're going back to just a standard 1-2-2-1 as if it's a laning phase. But I would imagine some of these lanes, when only 2 start to show up, we see big rotations coming out from Amber Hand to try and answer that.
Now, trying to see what itemization lies in store here as we start to approach that kind of 15K mark between the majority of our lobbies we pass through here. Notably, only major things I've started to notice are things like that Torment Pulse coming out from the like of Captain there, and we'll check out more. But with that urn now in play, fights ahead here.
Yep, urn again, picked up, moving across the map. Not getting too far. Still stuck here in mid. Frozen shelter available. Frost grenades being used here by Oni. He's going to take to the skies. That urn's going to start working itself backwards. I mean, Aura is disconnected from this fight. Aura is not in this at all. He's working his way for these objectives across the map, so he's going to start pushing York. Meanwhile, once he shows on the map, they're fighting those minions. That's the go button here for Mydong as they work their way through, having to deal with the time wall. Is going to be slowed down. No shot. The frozen shelter goes absolutely huge to keep everybody alive from not only the Lash ult, but the storm cloud on top of it all. And Mydong capitalized on 5 players trying to stand tall in the alleyways uptown. Mydong get punished for it.
Mydong now at least in the driver's seat when it comes to taking away the Rejuvenator here. Something to note is that it is still 2 live. I do not expect to see Aura or Obscure go for a steal, but I mean, at least the Walker likely to be picked up here on the other side from Aura, so all is not lost. But this is once again another huge win in that profile when we talk about team fight success. This is the second major team fight that we have happily seen Mydong absolutely destroy. And now Aura being potentially picked up there, going to expend the concussive combustion. It comes up absolutely moot. And it's another solo pickup, even with the Walker destroyed. Was not able to get out of there. And I mean, of all Mystics, I mean, Infernus is one of the quickest.
Yeah, tried to hang out a little too long there. And unfortunately, the ults did not help in sneaking away to safety. But all in all, you know, Guardian Walker picked up. I think they're still not in flex slot range. They still need one more Guardian or one more Walker. No, okay, they do eventually get that Walker or Guardian, excuse me, there. So they do have that flex slot available, so they'll start to make good on these souls that they've collected for themselves, especially that 20k on Aura in that Infernus. A sloppy fight. I think we're seeing Mydong be better in these team fights. We haven't quite seen either team to their full potential, right? Because the Urn fight, Oni was picking up and putting down the Urn. Did get the Frozen Shelter off, sure, but that felt like a 5v6, and Edge walked away from that one. And then Mydong do the same thing. They understand, hey, we've got a 6v5 in favor of us. Let's go ahead and win it out. And they get a whole lot more for winning that fight. It isn't just the Urn. Like we saw from Edge, it was the Urn, it was mid-boss with Rejuvenator. It feels pretty darn good. They feel invincible for the next 3 minutes. But I'm ready to see the 6 versus 6, right? This game is still so incredibly close. 4K souls separating these two teams. I'm ready to see a 6v6.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the Aura. That is, when we look at what they have to work with to keep that damage, I mean, consistent in fights. I mean, 7. Don't get me wrong, we talk about where he's at right now. Still looks very, very good between things like the Surge of Power online officially, and, of course, the likes of the improved Spirit. So definitely a menace, right, when it comes through with the complete charge. But it's Aura that needs to be there as well to be the backup to that early damage. Now, a paradoxical swap on a target that was more than happy to be swapped there. Pulls out and away for the time being, but it still comes to the cost of a Walker.
And now it's airdrop used, airdrop back to safety. Some resistances for the Ivy as the Pea shooter starts rat-a-tat-tatting, getting some damage onto Captain. And they want to get right back into this one. Captain actually getting scooped up, missing out on the Frozen Shelter there. It does eventually go down, but so much invested as the life swap comes through. Ivy now on the back foot. As Lady Geist gonna work their way through the fight. Aura just has to run from this huge last stand Aura that was just weighing so heavily on the shoulders of the Infernus. And now they're knocking at the door. 2 players down, make it 3 as the base Guardians under fire. Unfortunately for Edge, I mean, their last stand might be coming here soon.
Tavik here, deep on the shrine initially. That'll be both instantly picked apart. The only saving grace is that we're 20 minutes in, and there's still quite a bit of lag time when it comes to the cooldowns and the timers. But it's still going to come at the cost of the initial stage of the Patron. Even if they back away here, this is now massive pressure. You do not have safety. You do not have shrines. Most lanes are open up. If you aren't collectively clearing and pushing, I mean, you are going to lose out on what could be, I mean, your final moment of the game. Not to mention now, the map is so wide open in control of Mydong. They're going to be able to take away all that extra souls and farm that, I mean, picks like that 7, like that Infernus need to get online, need to be effective.
And it's an Urn picked up. It's camps along the way for Mydong as they're working their way back, and then they get to their half of the map, and they still have so many souls to go collect around it. So, the outside of pushing out your lanes for Edge right now, there hasn't been a whole lot to be able to work their way back into the game. Some of those camps are starting to pop up on the sides. We're seeing those tier 2s start to come back into the mix, but now looking at a 30,000 soul deficit. It's one of those situations where it's going to feel bad to leave your base.
Yeah. But they have to, right? I mean, it feels bad, but the risk is palpable in what they fail to maintain, right? And it doesn't change the fact that to play this game, to find a win, they have to get out there and they have to find some sort of advantage, whether it be the farm that they barely have a handle on anymore, or controlling these lanes a little bit further ahead, knowing that if it's just right at their shored edge, past the shrine, deep towards their patron, it's pretty much a guaranteed loss already. For the likes of Mydong now, especially with extra flex slots available, I mean, it's a complete recovery for this team to take some time. They cleared the notably Sapphire Flame side farm. They have to do the same on the responding edge, right? I mean, you see these pickups all starting to come through here when we talk about the extra itemization with flex slots available for just about everybody.
And it's formalities now. As we've cleared the denizens, we've worked our way back into the lanes. The Guardian still stands to be collected downtown Broadway, and it does look like Shiv gonna go scoop up the troopers that are pushing that direction. And this feels so oppressive because you get resistances when the troopers aren't in your base and the enemy tries to take things. And they're just working so hard, that being Mydong, to get every lane pushing. That way they can ensure that they've got troopers to help knock down that final health bar of the patron. And now they are going deep here. On to York Ab, looking for something. Saya just trying to get out of dodge as the rest of Mydong just working their way on through 2 base guardians to knock down, and they'll eventually back away from it. But it's a nice path from Oni to get the high ground on the opposite side. This is the hard part, however, right? It's the last part of the race, but it's inside the pit you have to go in order to take down that patron, and can be scary to be inside that pit, especially with a strong 6 standing on the side of edge.
A big problem for them is they're still waiting on that side lane push from York as well as Park, probably never to be in their favor with the ways the lane is set up right now. It could be potentially just something they have to wait and maybe potentially bait out. Pulling away, though, is something that draws Edge right out of their cubbyhole and finds Sonya. That's one of your biggest engage tools now, of course, down.
A huge tool, right? You're inside the pit, everybody gets ulted, gets put in the base, and that could completely turn the fight here towards the end of the game. But not having that available means they have to rely on the 5 remaining. Outgo the Malice stack, so damage amplification on top of the Mirage. Frozen Shelter gonna slow things down, but it saves everybody from the Storm Cloud for now. The health won't be enough, and after
the other side, that leads into just one by one, falling like dominoes, the remnants of Edge. And the saddest thing, Tanner,